Your Twitter account can create and activate a stress response just as much as, you almost getting hit by a car.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wellness Dojo podcast, where we provide real solutions to real health and wellness problems. On today's episode is Jess Leblanc, founder of Embodied Living, a company dedicated to fostering purpose and genuine connection. Jess, who is a yogi, amongst many things, teaches us the true forms of yoga and how we can incorporate these teachings into our lives starting today. Let's take a deep belly breath and get into it.
All right, welcome back to the Wellness Dojo podcast. We are so excited today to have Jess Leblanc here with us. Jess has an honors in child and health and development and a master's in teaching, and she also has her own company, Embodied Living. Now, I'm going to butcher all the credentials and everything that you have, Jess, so why don't we give it to you today to talk a little bit about your journey, how you got to where you are today, and kind of why you're doing what you're doing today as well.
Okay, I like that little handball.
Yeah.
It's like, and punt.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited. I feel like this has been a long time in the making, and it's so great to be able to see you in real life.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I guess my journey, I started off, I didn't know what I wanted to do, honestly. And I felt a lot of pressure, as I think a lot of young people, maybe even yourselves did at some point in high school. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Like, I have no experience in the world. And I went to university, and throughout university, I felt like I was just kind of exploring the world, learning about myself, learning about other people. It was a different time then, obviously, back a long time ago than it is now. But, dealing with some family stuff. I honestly wasn't even really that interested in school. I just kind of was there because I wanted to socialize, and it was like the thing to do.
Yeah.
You have the marks and you can do it. You got accepted. So why not take out a loan and go to university like everybody else? And, but yeah, I kind of always felt this like nudge that I wasn't doing what everyone wanted me to do. I just felt a little bit different. I think my whole entire life, I questioned everything, almost probably to the point that I irritated the absolute crap out of my parents and teachers. But so I went to university and started this degree with child health, and I wasn't sure if I was going to do go be a pediatrician or be a teacher. And honestly, I went to this career fair at one point, and this woman was from Australia, and she said, oh, you could go to Australia and do your master's and get your BEd and become a teacher. And I was like, okay, I'll go do that. Do I want to be a teacher? I don't know. I loved all my teachers, but this could be a path. So I go, and same thing, had a great time, never wanted to leave Australia ever. And I stayed for a very long time and taught in the schools. And throughout that experience, and I'm sharing this because I feel like it really helped to get to where I am. I recognized within the school system, as I was like bopping in and out of classrooms, and I did a lot of relief teaching, supply teaching, we call it here in Canada. I got a real taste of how different schools operated. I got experience in alternative education kind of industry, and then traditional state schools and all that kind of stuff. So I was really trying on a lot of different roles and experiences in the education system. And at the end of it all, I just kind of recognized like the need for more psychosocial interventions, relationship building, connection to self. Like, I always found myself problem solving with kids, having deeper conversations. Curriculum was always second place for me, whereas like the more life skills, because I felt like, as a young person that was struggling to find my own way, and maybe I had great leaders, but I didn't have all the answers. And so I kind of dug around for many years trying to find mentors and, tools and tricks of how to survive life, I guess. And so, I kind of exited the school system and really wanted to create my own thing. I'm a bit of a, I want to do my own thing. I don't want to work for anyone else. Yeah. But I kind of tried to build something that would give adults initially experiences to connect to themselves, experiences to connect to each other. And then it's kind of transpired that I still go into schools and help consult and help teachers develop these alternative skills. I guess I want to say more soft skills if you like in our Western world, I think we classify like the leadership skills, the communication, the relationship building, the time management, spirituality, all that kind of stuff, connection to your body. Like those seem like they're not as important as the academia, but I really believe that they're actually the most important. And without them, people aren't learning the chemistry. They're not learning the math. So
it's kind of a running joke when you get out of high school and stuff, where you're like, where's all the stuff that they don't teach you about like real life, like even from a financial standpoint of like how to manage my money better and all these different things. It's like there's so much in school, and like I say, it's almost a running joke, but it's very, very real, like you're describing. Is there's so much about education and that system right now that it just doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't prepare us for the real world, but there's a lot of missing pieces that you're touching on, right?
Yeah, and I really recognize that in the industry of school, like the education system, it was at the time really favored to specific type of learner, right? And if you didn't subscribe or you didn't conform to that way of being or that way of learning or relating and connecting within that paradigm, like you really got left behind or you fell through the cracks. And so I maybe didn't notice it as much as a learner, because I do feel privileged that I had really great teachers and I had a strong academic career, whatever the heck that means. Like I did well as a student, but I don't think I fostered the love of learning that I could have. Yeah. If I wasn't so focused, or if the focus hadn't been like, you have to do it this way and get it right. And, like I could see in myself how that kind of fostered, fear at times or insecurity about not being able to make mistakes or not exploring new things because I wasn't maybe good at them or I was unaware of how to start something different. So I don't know. I think, I have like such mixed feelings about school in general, and I really believe in getting kids outside more, just all the things that I think kids need, adults need as well. So I try to really bring we're just big kids in big kids in big bodies, and like I don't know, like we have so much that we have to heal from the past, and I don't know. So I, whilst I was kind of in Australia doing some teaching, I ended up doing my yoga teacher training, and I had kind of always been an athlete, and yoga was used initially as a recovery. And when I was in Australia and like going through some relationship hardships and just challenges, being on my own, away from my family, trying to understand my place in the world, and same thing, like navigating this new career path that I actually didn't like all that much. I was like, oh my gosh, I just spent all this money, all this time. And people were like, oh, well, you have to be a teacher. And I was like, in my heart just felt like this isn't the way that I want to teach. Yeah. And so kind of struggling, grappling with how much do I invest in this path? And am I wrong? Am I bad? Am I a failure if I want to do something different?
This idea that you have to follow through on things, right?
Totally.
Or like that you have to, I made this commitment, now I have to go through with it.
And my experience had been teachers, the teachers I knew had been teachers for 20 years and 25 years, and it's a good pension, and it's a great job. And everyone in Ontario where I was from, it was so hard to get a teaching job, and you just had to keep pushing and wait for your time. And I just couldn't subscribe to that. I don't have time for this. I don't even love it that much to sit around and wait for a short-term contract, So as I was kind of exploring and doing my thing, I ended up going to Bali actually and doing a yoga teacher training, and that kind of really shifted how I moved, how I felt, how I actually it gave me a vessel and a tool to connect a lot of the things that I was experiencing and the thoughts and the emotions. And my experiences like gave me an opportunity to find some meaning, I guess, between everything and clarity, and really just start listening to myself in a different way. And yoga became not just like, how do I recover from playing competitive soccer? It was like, oh yeah, this is actually something I need for my whole being to help ground me, to help me be a better person, I guess, or show up as my fullest self, I guess.
Yeah. It sounds like you had a lot of intuitiveness of like just like being in tune with what feels good for me. And we've talked a little bit about that in some of our episodes. Is that something that was learned for you, or was that something that you just naturally had this ability to kind of tap into like what feels good for me now and like adjust in those moments?
I think I've always had it. I really like to believe that everyone is intuitive, and I believe intuition is your body-based wisdom. Like, we know that our bodies, obviously being a doctor and a wellness practitioner and a coach and someone who works with the physical all the time, like, I really just don't think our body lies to us. And so I feel like we each have this innate ability to be intuitive, but similar to a bicep, if you're not working with the bicep muscle, or you're not listening, or you're not activating that part of yourself, I think that our intuition or our listening softens or dwindles. So I think my whole life I was a really intuitive, I'm super empathetic, and highly sensitive. So I feel like my experience growing up, I was always sensing and feeling what was going on in my environment. I had a pretty traumatic childhood, and not in the sense that like really horrible things happened, but I would say that like consistently there was negativity or fighting, or my parents were like in a really unhappy marriage. And I don't think that at the time a lot of adults had the capacity or the knowing to cultivate emotional intelligence. And therefore it was very much a upbringing of like, this is why, like, you're doing it because I said so, or I don't have time for that. Like, be quiet, Jay. Like, when I was trying to be curious and understand my environment, it was very much like, well, we don't have time for this, or we're just trying to survive as well. And I see it now, like my parents were just purely in survival mode. So I guess to my point, have I always had that skill or capacity? Yeah, I have, but I felt wrong about it. I felt like listening to what I needed. I started to, even in certain friendships or relationships, like growing up, I kind of always like felt like I knew what was good for me or what was not good for me, but the fear of not belonging, or the fear of upsetting someone, or, I've worked really hard to heal this part of myself, but I'm the type of person, like, I want to make it really easy for you so that you have time and space to love me. Yeah. Like, that's been like a big wound that I've worked to heal. So I think during that process, I really recognized like I've turned a lot of my intuition off at times in my life. And so yoga, or having the experience of being okay with listening to myself, has like reactivated and like re-inspired me to, that's like the only thing that matters to me, is like what my body is sensing and experiencing. And
yoga is one of those things too, where you it's pretty hard to do yoga and not be in tune with your body. Like, I mean, you have to learn that skill of like focusing and being attentive and stuff like that. But when I'm doing yoga, I feel all the parts of my body that are telling me they're tight and they're tense and stuff, right? Like, it very much almost forces you into that. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, I think you're having a conversation with all parts of yourself is kind of how I like to look at it. But and you can ignore it, and you can definitely practice yoga from a space of not being embodied and be very mechanical. And I think in our Western world, yoga has been that. For when it is for recovery, when it is for flexibility, just mobility, just from like one layer of our existence, which is the physical, like what we can see. But I truly believe the minute you start to practice and you actually investigate the philosophy of yoga, and you do it for the purpose of its original intention, and you combine your mind, your body, your soul, like it just illuminates so much for you, and quiets those parts that, heals those parts that are really torturing you, I want to say. Yeah,
like there's a literal balancing element to yoga as well in a lot of the poses, and like talking about healing and putting yourself holistically in balance. I always find that kind of interesting. And I do a lot of stretching. I wouldn't necessarily call it a yogic practice necessarily, but I found that I used to listen with music or put something on, and then I realized it's so much more enjoyable and fulfilling to just really tune into the moment and tune into my body and like feel the stretch and feel the balance. And it's it's because like you said, the way that we learn how to do anything is by it needs to have it's all like it favors physical purpose for sure, but like you said, it's something overly pragmatic. It's to increase your flexibility, or it's this or that. But tell us a little bit more about this concept, because the company's called Embodied Living, and I heard you say the term embodied, and I think I knew where you were going with it, but is that something we can expand on a little bit more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the word embodied is really important to me, and I started thinking about this concept of embodiment right after I had done this initial training, and then I've taken several trainings beyond that, trainings with the respect of mind-body medicine, and I'm really interested in Eastern philosophy and Eastern medicine, so kind of trying to find a way to marry the Western concepts of medicine, education, healing, and then the Eastern and all these other different, I think our healing journey in whatever domain of our health is a tapestry of all these different kind of modalities. And so I think our experiences as a human being, or we identify with so many different things. Like I'm a teacher, I'm a partner, I'm a sister, I'm a blah, blah, blah. So like our world tries to like segment or fragment us as humans, I think, and we compartmentalize a lot of ourselves, and we are this way at work and we're this way at home, and I really started to understand that hang on, there's actually no separating my work from who I am as a person, and the true authentic me is whole and can take those fragmented versions of myself, even the stuff that I don't want to look at, like the darkness and the tough times or the pain, like that's still a part of me and it's still a part of my story. And so this concept of being embodied and whole, like wholeness, circles, I have circles on my hands.
I want to just put acupuncture needles because it's the LI4 point, which is one of the master points in the body.
And it was intentionally put there as well.
Yeah, I was doing those points just the other day.
Yeah, so it's I started to recognize, okay, so this practice of yoga, this philosophy of yoga, like the asana is just this much of it, So as I started to really, the asana being the poses, as I started to live my life more from the lens of the whole philosophical part of yoga, which I already was doing, but now I had language. Do you know what I mean? Like I had kind of like a framework to work in now, and I had things to help guide me. Whereas before I was like, yeah, I'm intuitive, or, oh, I just like, I'm really drawn to this thing or this spiritual element, or I love kindness, it's like, so as I started to look at this word embodiment, and I really recognized that, it's generating wholeness and generating connection to oneself. And then from there, like your place in your community, your place with your family, your place in the planet and beyond, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people who are listening who maybe either haven't done yoga in a long time, or from the outside looking in, I think it can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes for people when they're like, yeah, I would love to be like you and like have this intuitiveness and embodiment and stuff like that. Where do people start? Like, how can people start to do that for themselves if they're in a situation where they're either like just like hyper stressed, or they're just like not living a lifestyle that they want, or their body constantly hurts and all these types of things? Where do people start with trying to like tap into that and like find that embodiment?
Yeah, I mean, we're all strapped and stressed and tapped and at our threshold, at our max. And I have really noticed in conversation with people who want to start living a life more in alignment, more holistic, there's that word again, or a more embodied, like connected. And when I say connected, I mean like you're connected to your sensory experience, you're connected both internal and external, like your landscapes, your environments. But then you also make decisions from the place of your highest good. And I see people making decisions that are from that lens of survival, or from what I call below the line, which is judgment, fear, worry, unforgiveness, doubt, like we're constantly
the ego, stuff.
Constantly setting goals, setting intentions, like living in a space like that is kind of down here. And so something that I suggest to people is like, you don't have to overhaul. Like, you don't have to get a 1-year unlimited yoga pass. Like, you don't have to subscribe to every element of the philosophy of yoga. You can still eat meat if you want. You can still cross train. Like, please cross train and do find some kind of way that works for your life, whether it's journaling for 5 minutes or doing a meditation here and there, or saying no to a dinner date that you don't want to go to versus saying yes because you want to people please, just starting to kind of look and observe in the smallest of ways where you self-abandon or where you give up a part of yourself and you fragment, and versus where you can create wholeness. Like 10 minutes on your yoga mat, just lie there, like close your eyes, breathe. I don't know, like it takes 90 seconds really to restore your nervous system. So it's like breathe, like anything.
I think that is how you find, like you mentioned, like a holistic approach. It's something we were talking about before we started recording today, but this holistic approach of being like, it doesn't have to be like this or that or this or that. It can be all the things that feel the best for you, or the things that seem to be working for you, right? Like Dr. Ali, like what do you, when you think of holistic, like what comes to mind for you?
What comes to mind is you just can start to reach your root out a little bit, and then over time it can really branch, and the concept of holism can become more holistic. But it's really about not ignoring any elements of yourself and your health. And so we typically talk about physical health and mental health, and then where it gets a little bit trickier is to talk about spiritual health, because it is so subjective. But to me, it is that sum that's greater than the parts. It's something that is very, very deep, and it's not even primitive. It's like cosmic. And when you start using some of these words, you can start to lose people if they're not open to it. But it's still something that it's very important to consider for yourself. You get to define it a little bit for yourself. So if you're going, do I have spiritual health? And if the first answer is I don't know, well, that's a good place to start. You can explore it a little bit. What does that mean for me? And so, maybe to be spiritual could just mean to be connected to the moment. And so when you're talking about lying on your yoga mat for 90 seconds and giving the nervous system a break and just allowing yourself to feel calm, and during meditation you're allowed moments to feel how good it feels to breathe in deeply and breathe out deeply and not have to be caught up in thought and things like that. So for me, when I see resistance to holistic health, it's people that think it's crystals and things that they maybe have had a negative experience with at some point in their life that they don't enjoy or they don't believe in. But it's so much more than that. So you just kind of start with the root, and then just kind of go from there. And if it's 90 seconds on the yoga mat, and then eventually it's a whole lifestyle, well so be it. But it's got to be more than just having your nervous system in fight or flight constantly. And I think that there's also everyone's familiar with the concept of like yin and yang, right? Yang being more of the energetic type of energy output, and then yin being more restorative. Well, you have to have both, at least a little bit of yin. I think everyone's got yang. It's like almost everyone, but you need a little bit of that other stuff. And often, I was just having this conversation yesterday. It's like I don't even know what restorative means. I don't even know what to do for that. It's like what do I do? And so I gave a couple suggestions, and some might work and some might not. But you need both. You need to be outputting, and then you need to be filling and restoring somehow too.
It's funny that you talk about spiritual as being like that tricky one, because when I work with clients, one of the things that I'll do initially is I'll have them kind of highlight the different areas of their life and like kind of score themselves on it and how they feel they're doing. And anytime like spirit, it would be like professional, spiritual, relationships, physical, all that kind of stuff. And when people get to spiritual, they're always stumped. Like almost every single person is always stumped, and they're like, I just don't understand, like, what does that mean? Is it religion? Is it this? Is it that? And I'm like, well, it's everything. It's all of it, right? And it's a difficult thing to define for people too. Do you come across that as well when people are like, what is this, like spirituality and stuff like that?
Yeah. My whole entire business, like, it's really hard to market intangible goods and services.
Yeah.
And, it's not, here's this microphone, it costs $100. Like, there's so much that gets invested, our time, our energy, into becoming well, for example, or becoming a more spiritual version of ourselves. And when it is this intangible or seemingly elusive concept, like, people are terrified. They don't know what they're going to get or if they're ever going to get it. And I think we've also done a disservice in our world thinking that it is this idea of like, oh, well, we will be enlightened. Like, what does that even mean? I think for me with the concept of spiritual health, it's like, are you connected to yourself? Are you able to honor yourself? Are you able to make choices that are for your highest good and like switch out of a reactive autopilot type of lifestyle and turn on your ability to discern what is appropriate and good for you, and what's appropriate for you and you is different to me, and just giving space to that. And I don't mind. I always say to people, I'm like, God, Allah, like Jesus, whatever, source, nature, universe, like I don't get upset with language because I know that, like Bob Marley says, he who feels it knows it. Like I can't explain my spiritual connection, whether it's with a crystal or without a crystal. But I think that's giving room to have time to think and ponder and question and increase your awareness. Like, why am I doing that? Or like, what did I feel in this moment?
Yeah.
Or where am I going? Like, what is the purpose of this?
Yeah,
like, it's just so imperative.
Yeah, and it's super fascinating. I think of it like at the end of my life, I'm really curious if at the end of my life, will I be laying there and like feeling like I was able to connect with myself in a strong way, or like fully, I think like understanding yourself and stuff. Like we talk about like, who am I really, or what's my purpose and all these different things. I think spirituality for me anyways is like about the exploring part of that. And like the fact that it's always changing. Like I'm not the same person I was before I had kids, or before I was married, or before I had a business. Like it's continually evolved. And so it's about like continually checking in with that and asking yourself, like, am I happy doing what I'm doing right now? Am I still feeling fulfilled from it? Has my purpose changed? All of these different things. Whereas I think as society, we think like we have to like figure that out, or it's like we have to get to a place where it's like, there it is. It's like, well, no, you might be like, there it is this week, and then next week is different, right? And that's part of the practice, I think, right?
Yeah. And how do we remain in flow? How do we remain in balance with that masculine, that feminine, so the yin, the yang? How do we exist in this planet, on this planet, with all these other beings? How do we co-regulate in this space and feel harmonious, I think? And some people at home might be like, well, what does feeling harmonious even mean? And I ask people too, like, when was the last time you felt optimal health? And people are like, I don't even know. Like, so I think we've given so much weight and so much emphasis on the doing in our world, the tasks, the accomplishments, the accolades, the degrees, and we haven't. And this is why I do what I do. Like, how do we get people to be comfortable in the being? How do we get people to be? And I'm noticing, I can't speak for anyone else, but people are terrified given what's happened in the last 2 years. And, if you had some stuff in your life that you needed to look at, well, the pandemic was going to force you to really slow down and look at that. And that's been really hard for people, you know, without the supports and the resources that maybe they needed, like that unexpected jolt into awareness.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that. I was talking to a friend literally last night. We went for dinner, and this particular friend was telling me about, you know, some anxiety that came up like during the pandemic and stuff. And I said, yeah, you know, I felt it too. Like there's all this anxiety that popped up. I said, but it wasn't even really about the pandemic. It was more like, it was like the tipping point where it's like, now, like whether it was just like the opportunity that we were given to like sit back and like have to reflect or whatever the case might have been. And I know so many people have experienced this throughout it. But yeah, it's like it wasn't even about necessarily what was happening in the world. It was just like the tipping point, and then it's like all this stuff just like comes up, and you're like, okay, well, I guess I have to deal with this now, because now my body's like screaming at me that I have to deal with it or else, right?
Yeah, and we've noticed with all of our clients, you know, there's different pathways that we could have gone over the pandemic. We could get activated and work through the stress, right? The responses, or actually be aware and take some different steps to create a new outcome for ourselves. And then we've had the opposite end of that, where we've gone into shutdown mode and it's all just a bit too much, and the nervous system and the body is like, I'm out of here, like emergency shoot, shut the lights off, this is too much, I am going to numb, disassociate, see you later.
Yeah.
And good thing those liquor stores were never closed down.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I know that's something you're really passionate about too, is just like that connection and like understanding your nervous system more. And when we're talking about spirituality, like one of the things that clouds that ability to tune into yourself is definitely stress. And like you mentioned, like the to-do lists and the tasks, and we're so like task oriented and task focused in our world. What's the connection there, and how do you believe that stress really impacts people's ability to get in tune with themselves and to, you know, just be more intuitive?
Well, I think it's a complex thing. The nervous system is incredible, right? And I'm really grateful for all of us having a nervous system, because it's our survival capacity. It's telling us when we're safe and when we're in danger and what to do. But as much as our system is so intuitive, is so intelligent, it's also primitive. Our nervous system is primitive, so we haven't had an evolution biologically, physiologically, to understand or discern, like, well, is this stressor real? Is this actually a life-threatening saber-toothed tiger coming to eat my village type of stressor? Or is this, the kids are rushing around needing to go to 5 different sports? Your body will respond in the same way, you know, or like an existential life crisis. Like who am I? Why am I here? What is this pandemic teaching me or not teaching me? Like your body physiologically is responding. And Dr. Raleigh would see this with like cortisol levels, and you know, his patients, if they're ingesting food and digesting food, if they are having regular bowel movements, like there's so many things that are sleeping well, like insomnia, like all this stuff, headaches, pains, chronic pain. Your body is constantly giving you feedback to tell you like you're either safe or you're in danger. And I think with this whole lifestyle, like our culture of just go, push it through, like you can do it. We don't ever have time to regulate our nervous system. We don't choose to regulate because we don't have the information either. And I think that's what we're here to do, is to help educate people, like, okay, from a physiological perspective, this is what's happening in your body, and you're not unique or different. Everyone's got this mechanism, you know, like we're all anxious at times. We all experience depression. We all have the full range of emotions, but like how quickly, how smoothly can we shift from being in those shutdown states or those activated states? How can we get back into joy, love, forgiveness? You know, how do we process, like truly complete the cycle of stress? Otherwise, unprocessed stress is trauma, and it lives in the body and it lives in our mind. And our relationships. It's all over. So
yeah. And Jess, you mentioned like the analogy with a bicep muscle too earlier. I think it's very similar with this, right? Where you're saying like, we all have this, and this nervous system is here, and it wants to work for us, right? But if you're not exercising, it's the same way if you're not treating your muscles the way that they need to be treated, well, then they're going to kind of rebel against you, right? Like you're going to start to feel aches and pains in those muscles if you're constantly have your shoulders forward at the desk and you're not creating a balance with it and, you know, exercising that balance, then those muscles are going to work against you. They're going to fight back. And I think our nervous system does the same thing. And that's where people can see things like, I mean, you guys can speak to this as well, but, you know, panic attacks and, you know, major anxiety and even depression and that type of thing. A lot of times, like my belief is, you know, and not with a ton of educational background in this area, but my belief is that that's a lot of times it's your nervous system kind of rebelling and saying like something needs to change. Like this is a warning sign right now. Right?
Oh yeah. Your body is always like tapping you, scratching you, like, hey, some like symptoms are like stuff's going on long before symptoms appear, as we all know, right?
People think it's like the body's nagging you and they're like, could you stop it? Like just I need to get on with my life and my to-do list. But it's like, no, please pay attention to it. Otherwise it's going to start screaming. It's not just going to be tapping on the shoulder anymore.
Yeah. You get what I call the universal smackdown, you know, where you have to look, you're hospitalized, or you know, you're really in a state of affairs. And I find it really interesting too, like in the health world, we classify typically, Dr. Riley, I'm not sure what you do in the naturopathic world, but typically any symptom that is experienced for 1 month, 1 to 3 months is considered chronic. And so you look at a lot of symptoms or experiences that people are going through, you know, like anxiety, panic attacks, depression, like anger, upset, like digestive issues. Like people are experiencing chronic illness, chronic dis-ease in the body, and still don't know what to do. Because our lifestyle, we have a long way to go before we actually give merit to slowing down and look at it as like a necessity versus
Dr. Ellie, like how often do you see somebody where like you've been working with them for a while and then all of a sudden it comes up where they're like, oh yeah, and by the way, like I haven't been digesting well for the last year, but I think it's probably normal. And you're
just
like,
gluten, Dr. Riley. It's just gluten.
It's not normal.
Yeah. No, I love how it's finally becoming fully accepted in our world and in the medical community that something like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, is just almost exclusively it's a mind-body connection condition, and it's intimately connected with anxiety in particular. And I'm so happy to see things like that be universally accepted and known now finally, because it is. It's not just mind-body connection. That's just that holistic stuff again.
That's like, that Jess girl, that Yogi girl with the long hair. Yeah.
But that's one of the signs right away that you're probably in fight or flight, you're anxious, you're not digesting, because digestion is taxing and it takes energy, and so your body triages certain things, and if it's survival, it shuts down digestion and it shuts down your immune system, and because it thinks it's in a constant state of having to get away or having to protect itself. I know like the past 2 years have been they force you to go inward. And some people, like you said, will go there and they'll slay the dragon and they will come out of it victorious, and others will go in and never come out of the cave. Well, hopefully they can with our help, but I see a lot of people that are still down in the cave, you know, now the dragon's prisoner, so to speak, right? And I went through a little bit of that too, like for myself, being alone a lot more in the house and with my own thoughts. My thoughts were going to like how fragile life is, and my life and the life of my family, and more the concept of mortality kept coming up over and over again, and that was like a repetitive thought. But then the silver lining of something like that, of talking about mortality all the time, is well, cultivating a deep appreciation and gratitude for the people that are still with you, and, you know, for life itself and things like that. So that's what I mean by you can go right into the fire and come out victorious, or you can just let the concept of mortality drag you down forever, right? And yeah, but I think one of the ways to emerge victorious that we were talking about a little bit earlier is it's like you can't be in this constant state of consumption. Right? If you're constantly consuming, you're not in the present moment, like, you know, news. I hate the news, but I hate harping on it all the time
watch the news.
But I'm a recovering news addict. And I think that the moments when I was getting sickest was the moments where I was most involved in the news, and actually deactivated my Twitter account this morning.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, it just got too much. So yeah, if you're wondering, well, what's a good starting place? Look at how much you're think of all the things you're consuming through your eyes and through your ears. So eyes as digital media and print and things like that, especially if it's negative. So that's a good place to start. How much am I consuming? Because when you're consuming, you're not checking in with yourself, and you're being bodied, but you're not being embodied.
Yeah. And the philosophy of yoga really has these codes of conduct, so to speak, and these, you know, just like any kind of practice, there's these different ways in which you can embody the practice and use the knowledge and integrate it into your life. And one of the concepts is saucha, which is cleanliness and like filtering and knowing like clean space, clean mind, like what's coming in, what's going out, like to your point. And it's so important because, again, if our nervous system doesn't have, it's super intelligent, but doesn't have a mechanism that can understand the difference between real threat and perceived threat. So your Twitter account can create and activate a stress response just as much as, you know, you almost getting hit by a car, which is like a real danger. So it's just really fascinating right now that all of us are so souped up like on danger, really.
Yeah.
Like,
and it is an addiction. I think I was addicted to the feeling of it, the fight or flight feeling of it.
We don't often know anything else. And like, if we grew up in an environment, like for myself, as an example, like I'm so grateful that I can look back and I can say like, oh, my parents were doing the best that they could with the resources they had. Like, I don't fault my parents for any of my experiences. I'm actually trying to extract the learnings and the lessons. But I grew up in a very hectic, chaotic, loud, overstimulated environment where people were also volatile. Like missing an exit on the highway was a huge stress response, you know, because everyone was so activated and in this survival mode. And I really had to work to deprogram myself, like, because the way that we respond to stress often comes from our learned behavior, our models, like what we saw as little kids. So it's just it's a fascinating world to look into when it comes to how stress affects us. And I know we were talking about yoga, but yoga is a modality, is a tool to help you connect inward, to actually sense, oh yeah, okay, I'm in my body. I'm noticing this stomach ache thing going on and these creaks and cracks in my shoulders. How can I take a moment to pause? Oh yeah, I was on my Twitter account for 3 hours last night before I was meant to be resting. You know, like it's all kind of working together. So yoga gives you a space, I think, to, kind of tune in to what's needed now.
Yeah, and I like that you're talking about yoga being more than just what we typically see or what most people typically think of, like especially this might be stereotyping, but especially men. Like anytime I talk to a guy about, not anytime, it's growing, more and more men are doing yoga and stuff now, but I find men tend to have more resistance to the practice because of what they think it is, whereas like what you're saying is there's so much more to it. It's not just about like stretching and putting your like holding poses and stuff. There's so much more to it. It's an opportunity for you to connect to your body and for you to actually like do some of this mental practice that maybe you don't normally give yourself time for during the day.
Yeah, and you know, things like Instagram, where we're seeing yoga being reflected back at us as these perfect poses with these images of young, vibrant humans in crop tops. Like okay, cool, that's all great, but I don't care what the physical pose necessarily looks like. I want you to be safe and integrated and, you know, that kind of thing. But again, if you're practicing yoga off of your mat and integrating it into how you speak to people, into what you say to yourself, into what you're consuming, how you're showing up, what you're choosing for yourself, like that is really where the magic starts to kind of unfold, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some parallels with, is there parallels with Buddhism then as well, like right speech and things like that? Yeah, that's really cool. I definitely want to learn a little bit more about that within yoga, because even to hear that, like I remember a few years ago hearing that a big part of real yoga is actually breathing, and there's certain styles of yogic breathing that are in, and I started looking into it a little bit, and even got into it for a few months. It was just neat to conceptualize that yoga is also breathing, and that was so foreign to me, learning about it. So you mentioned like the cleanliness, which is more of an input, like sensory input cleanliness, and maybe an internal cleanliness. What are some of the other maybe tenets or some things like that within yoga that people might not be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, I could use the Sanskrit terminology, but I think it might get lost on people. And again, does knowing Sanskrit make you a better yogi? No, it doesn't. It's sort of like we have this illusion that, oh, well, in order to be a perfect yogi, it requires this, this, and this. But I think if you just get the general basics of the word yoga itself means union, connection, and I really aim to practice that on a regular basis. So how I treat myself, how I treat other people, really recognizing the light in me honors the light in you. Like there's nothing that is different or disconnects us really, besides my choices and my actions or my words. So ahimsa, for example, is do no harm or nonviolence. And this is one I think about a lot. And it's not simply don't physically harm people or yourself, but what are you saying on Twitter? Why are you saying that? What are you doing in response to someone who cuts you off in traffic? How do you show up for your family? I think there's that element to it that is really vital for people to recognize. And then
those things, not to cut you off, sorry, but like those things of like the actions you're taking, I think have such a strong impact on how you perceive things and how you like receive things as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you're not getting mad at people in traffic for cutting you off, like you're probably more likely to also not get that same stress response when somebody else cuts you off. You'd be like, well, that person they're doing what they need to do. We didn't get in an accident. We can keep going along with my day.
Move on. Yeah, it doesn't become this patterned response. And the brain loves patterns, right? So the brain is constantly finding ways to cut corners and create ease. And sometimes that's a really great thing and efficient. But then other times, like we do get in these feedback loops where X equals Y, and that's how I play this out, whereas if we just take a different look at it, or if we stop and we pause and we calm our nervous system before we jump into that fight or flight, it can do a lot of wonders for how you move out throughout your day, I guess. But another one is like asteya, which is non-stealing, and same, I'm not going to steal your microphone or your computer, of course, your tangible belongings, but I also won't steal your time or your energy. And I recognize that boundaries are really vital, and conscious connections with people, and being mindful of abusive tendencies, or how you I guess teach people how to treat you also, so there's
that one that you just touched on, I think is so important, right? Is people, I've had times in my life where I've looked at people and I'm like, this person is so toxic, but when you really look at it, you're like, I've allowed them to create that. Like that's my ownership, stepping forwards and saying like, I've allowed this, I've let this happen, or I've created this, in a sense of like, well, you talk about people pleasing and stuff like that. That's definitely something that's come up in my life where I've realized like, I've very much been a people pleaser for a lot of my life, and that allows a lot of that toxicness to come into my life, where I let that friend, complain all the time to me, and I try and help them and stuff like that, when really like I can't handle that right now, or something like that. I think a lot of that's like taking control of that. So I'm glad you touched on that for sure.
Yeah, well, and in the stress response world, the fight, flight, freeze, there's also a new one that's emerging called fawn, like a baby deer. And a lot of the behaviors that are associated with that style of stress response are people pleasing, are martyr behavior, are codependency. Like it's like you think of this like fragile, like, complacent being in a way. And it's not that people are bad, but there's an underlying reason that is driving someone's behavior like that. And it's typically like, oh, I'm fearful that I'm going to be abandoned, or I'm fearful that I'm not going to be loved or liked, or I'm going to be alone. Like it's never just like, oh, oops, I let that toxic person in my life. It's why was that happening? And I think for me, my work, not only the physical practice of yoga or meditation or mindfulness or all those modalities, but helping people to experience growth in a way that just gets them to kind of pull open the rug, like see what's been swept under there, and just be like, oh wow, it's really dirty under there. Like, let's just take a look and do some heavy lifting and sweeping, and then be done with it.
Don't just put the rug back down.
Yeah. And also, like, I just really aim to help people understand that embarking on a transformative journey where you're growing, or you're taking that look within inside yourself and how you are engaging with the world. Like, it doesn't have to be so scary. But I think we've been trained and so ingrained that our identities are these, and the things we do and the things we achieve, and I don't know, it's just not working for us anymore. Like, some of the systems are just archaic now, and we have to upgrade the way that we do things. So
you mentioned kind of like your teaching stuff. I know that's a big like a way that you approach, whether it's yoga or whatever it is that you're doing, is a teaching aspect. And like with that embodiment, it's like really trying to guide people through that. Can you speak a little bit just about like what kind of the model is when you're teaching people with these things, and just like how you approach that with people, especially people who are coming in who are brand new to this kind of world?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. It's a really important question for me. I work through the lens of experiential education, and I often say to people, like, we need to work to have you regulated, to have you safe, and to have you engaged in the learning, and have you in full choice about the learning. So if we go back in time to our schooling experiences, we learned a lot of stuff that we didn't choose. Most often we were like, oh, but I really want to take that course. Oh, well, that's not part of your degree. So like we didn't foster this curiosity. And so
that was the big grab towards university. I finally get to learn what I want to learn. Like,
just kidding. No, you
class
don't.
is full. You didn't log on by noon. Sorry.
But like, that was the appeal for me, was like when I was finishing high school, like I was like, oh, now I get to choose what I want to do. It's not just like things I have to be taught. And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off again there, but
it's such a relevant thing. So if people take a course with me, for example, I don't grade them. I don't handhold. I really am help them to embark on a journey of personal responsibility and accountability, and to like reduce the pressure when it comes to the learning, and to give them lots of different ways to learn. So visuals, audibles, like kinesthetic, like we go outside in nature, we use different resources. Like, I want people to get the content in whatever way they can digest it. So, and for me, it's not about memorizing, it's about applied learning and application and integration. So you can read all the books, you can listen to all the podcasts, you can consume so much, and yet if nothing is being integrated, it's a waste of your time.
You have to be willing to like practice.
Just show up, really. And you don't have to be perfect. And I always say that to people. I'm like, you don't need to walk out of this course like fully healed miraculously. Like, it's about just starting to integrate new ways of thinking, new ways of being, new ways of working, and just being open, like being open to the fact that there might be another way to view a situation, or there might be someone who sees it differently because of their lived experiences. So, but yeah, like at the end of the day, all of my courses really help people to get to the heart of the matter and what's most important versus just I can't do the surface anymore. It's not helping anyone, in your work, Dr. Riley, too, it's like you have to find the source of what is going on, whether it's mental or emotional or physical. I mean, I don't think there's any disconnecting them, but there's going to be something, some experience, some tether, some cord that is just got a grip on people. So I feel like just slowly kind of, I always talk about like a big ball of yarn, like we're all just big balls of tangled up yarn, and I just help people find the end and then slowly like pull it apart and straighten things out.
I love that. It's super aligned with what I'm doing with the Wellness Dojo as well. Very similar concept of like the way that I have it set up is so people go through like different levels of this like program that I've created, but there's no like marking or grading. So you get like your yellow belt and white belt, like all these different things you go through the program. But I've had people come to me and they're like, okay, I'm a yellow belt now, but like, do I have to get like a specific result to like achieve that? And I'm like, well, no, because that's not the idea here. It's not about I have to like get this exact result, or there's no right or wrong way to go about it. So I'm not really like grading people on it the same way that like we were tested in martial arts, right? For our yellow belts and for our orange belt and those types of things. And there was a right or wrong way with fitness, nutrition, mindset, stress, like all these things. There's no right or wrong way to go about it. It's just about like, are you still here? Are you still showing up? Are you still actively working towards this? Because if you are, then you deserve some credit.
Yeah. And I teach people how to teach yoga, and they're always like, well, what kind of yoga am I learning? I'm like, well, I just joke. I'm like, you're learning the true yoga. And they're like, but like, what kind of class am I going to teach? I'm like, I don't know. What kind of class are you going to teach? Like,
I need to know what to post on my Instagram.
To hashtag it.
Yeah, like I'm going to give you the ingredients, and you can create whatever it is you want to create, but please create it in a way that feels authentic to you, because we all know that if someone is teaching you something, speaking to you, like helping you with your health, and you don't have a relationship, like you don't value anything that you don't have a relationship with. So if my students show up authentically and offer their unique gifts in a way that feels good to them, then like that is going to land a whole lot better than creating little versions of me that say the same thing. Like no one is me and I am no one else. So it's like, just try to get people closer to themselves, I guess.
Yeah.
We're rounding out the hour here already, but I wanted to make sure I touched on one more concept, and that seems to be part of the company, and that's this concept of adventure. Right? Yeah.
Right? Where's that gone? Yeah. What's an airplane? What's happening?
It's been tough, but it looks like you've still tried, certain retreats or camping trips or things like that. So that seems to be something that's important to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the upper level of our nervous system when we're connected and when we're in joy and we're engaging with our environment. We feel safe to try new things. And so I really believe that, as humans, we need new stimulus. We need to get out of our comfort zone, so to speak. But I'm not of the mindset that you just push through and out of your comfort zone. Like I want to create spaces that feel regulated and safe, because I don't know that people will have a sustainable growth experience if they're in a stress response getting out of their comfort zone. So
people often tell me like, how do I break through this? And I'm like, you don't. If you feel like you have to break through it, then you're not ready yet. Like you need to open the door first and then walk through it. Right. And opening the door is the hard part, I think. But I hear that term all the time. How do I break through this? How do I break this wall down? I'm like, don't break the wall down. Like, chip away at
Paint
it.
on it, maybe.
Yeah, transform it to something else, or see it differently. So, but before the pandemic, when travel was really accessible, and I wanted to take people to different unique places on the planet, and that will happen again when people are ready and the world is ready for us to do so. But giving people a curated experience where they can have this holistic travel experience where they're in a new place, they're outside of their everyday life, and it's not to escape their life. Like, we talk a lot about what's going on back at home, or you meet new people to help you when you return back to your life. Like, it's not about, oh, let's go to Vegas and get drunk and forget about it. It's like, how do we actually go to this beautiful place where we can be together? Whether it's a beautiful place outside, like I also run a festival in the summer here, which is accessible to families. Like, how do we just get in community back into the village and support each other and navigating the throes of life, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Can we do a shout out website? Was that the Lucent Festival that you're
Lucent
talking about?
Festival.
Okay, can we do a shout out to website, upcoming events, and maybe flagship courses or education?
Yeah, I mean, I have a course coming out that will be launching. It'll be a pre-recorded course, so you can take it at your own pace. It'll be all about stress and the nervous system. So not anything really to do with yoga, but everything to do with yoga, but and then I don't know about retreats for this coming year, but embodiedliving.ca was where people can find all the information to Lucent Festival. That will be in August, usually the second weekend in August, and just in Kananaskis. So family friendly, everyone is welcome.
Yeah, it looks really nice. Looks like it went down in 2021 at least.
I have continued to run festivals throughout the pandemic because people need human connection.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like adventure. It could be many, many things. It could be trying a new sport. It could be just trying something that you haven't tried before. And maybe that's connecting with Jess and trying something that you're offering. So if you're looking for that little dose of adventure, then definitely go check her out. So.
Yeah, adventure and connection.
Yeah,
connection with the self and connection with others. That's what I gathered from what you're putting out there, which is really great.
As we adventure out, I really believe that helps us to venture in.
Awesome. Well, this was super fun. I think we could probably talk for hours and hours. This hour just flew by. So thank you so much for coming and being in person. I absolutely love that.
So good.
A long time coming, and definitely worth it, I think.
Awesome.
Thank you guys for the work that you're doing. It's so necessary, and people are blessed to have you in their lives. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, I feel like my nervous system had a nice break during the last hour. So
good. Absolutely. Good. Okay. Well, thank you guys for watching. Check us out on our social medias, and we'll see you in the next episode.
See ya.
For additional support or to work with one of us one-on-one, go to our website, www.wellnessdojo.ca. You can also find us on Instagram at Wellness Dojo YYC, or on all other social media platforms searching The Wellness Dojo. We'll see you in the next episode.